Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Cimmerian September, Michael K. Vaughan's BookTube event celebrating the writings of Robert E. Howard, specifically Conan the Barbarian, but this year you are urged to read other Robert E. Howard, all the incredible variety of stuff that he wrote, both privately and most especially for Deadline, in his short writing career. It's a lot. It's a lot more than people think. Because he wrote one of literature's relatively limited roster of truly immortal characters, in Conan the Barbarian, passerby readers or tourists tend to think that's all he wrote. But no, he wrote a lot of other stuff. And I am ignoring that that guideline for Cimmerian September. Instead, I am reading back issues from 40 years ago of the old Savage Sword of Conan put out by Marvel Comics. An oversized black and white magazine where you get more Conan adventures. It's black and white and it's oversized and was more expensive, so that it could be put somewhere else in the newsstand. Not on the metal spinner rack with the comic books, but maybe with the magazines and maybe behind the front row. As a nod of the hat, as an acknowledgement to its explicit content, so that children wouldn't find it. I found that I've read now an enormous number of Savage Sword of Conan, not only because I read it when it was coming out, but also because I've reread and read a lot of it for Cimmerian September over the years. And I found that these magazines often don't take advantage of that kind of editorial freedom. Not that I'm reading it really for the gore and the explicitness. It's just, it'd be interesting to see what a writer or especially an artist could do with that if they took a little bit more freedom. But I am rereading these old issues, and I am at issue number 108. That is the cover. And once again, the picture immediately inside, the frontispiece of the story is called Claws of the Osprey. And once again, that is a better cover. Put background behind that, cliffs far in the distance to show that they're high above the ground. Paint this and put color in it, and that is a better cover than this. This is not a good cover. Really, it's a little wooden, and it's not proportionate at all, and it's a little boring, a little static. But this has a original artwork on the inside cover. They are not connected with the issue, just a little bit of conceptual art. Almost all of these issues of Savage Sword of Conan have something like that. And the Claws of the Osprey is written by Michael Fleischer, and we are told once again that it is drawn by Gary Kwapich, and with inks by Ernie Chan. And I don't know that I believe that. I don't know the name Gary Kwapich. I don't believe there was such a person. But if there was, I don't know what he did in this issue, because this is pretty clearly drawn and inked by Ernie Chan. But I could be wrong about that. And the story opens with an amazing bit of establishing artwork. There's actually quite a bit of good artwork in here. I'm so glad that Cimmerian September taught me to like the artwork of Ernie Chan. I am so glad that happened. He is actually a really good artist, in addition to being a really reliable inker. And we are in Corinthia, a Hyborian region that is constantly beset with fighting between city-states. Think of the city-states of ancient Greece or the city-states of the Italian Renaissance. That is the equivalent here that Robert E. Howard is mapping onto this ancient world of Corinthia, where these city-states are constantly fighting each other. And we get this amazing opening scene there that is meant to show that. I firmly believe, no offense to Michael Fleischer, but I firmly believe that almost all of this issue could be done without dialogue. And I think Michael Fleischer must have come to something like that same conclusion himself, as we will see at the end of the issue. But one of the kingdoms, does it matter what their names are? One of the kingdoms is besieging another. And Conan is working as a freelance military expert for one of the kingdoms. He has come up with a way to deal with the siege towers. You can see there the siege towers that are meant to convey men and also hurl rocks. In the Hyborian Age, they are not pulled and pushed by giant trolls like in Lord of the Rings. But Conan has come up with a way to deal with these things by using winches to pull them over, to topple them over. But his winch is destroyed when a catapulted rock hits his battlements. So he decides, in Conan fashion, to use brute force of his own to topple the thing without the need for a winch, which is a pretty neat Conan moment there. We get a gigantic crash panel. We get a lot of large, almost whole-page panels here to match what I believe is a fairly naked, a fairly underdressed plot. Conan and the king that he is serving are frustrated. Here's another great visual. Look at that interior. Just amazing. That's amazing. These men still refer to Conan as barbarian, so I don't know in the context of this story how long he's been with them or what their relationship is, but they are frustrated. These men, especially the prince of this city, are frustrated because they seem to be losing. Conan thinks that it's because they have a spy in their midst. But the prince thinks that really all he needs is a wonder weapon, something that will tip the scale in his favor. And he has a guy for that. He has a guy who creates his wonder weapons. The guy is Paul Tierno, P-O-L, Tierno. And he is an arrogant, pot-bellied little man who tells the prince that genius does not work on a schedule, and that his inventions can only happen when they happen. Conan is extremely doubtful about that when he tells the man, well, maybe a spear in your gut would speed up your timetable. And Paul Tierno doesn't like that. There's nothing he can do. He storms off in a huff to his own laboratory, saying, those bird-brained fools. And you'd think somebody who really likes birds as much as he is going to reveal himself to do would not consider bird-brained to be an insult. But he's also revealed as being the traitor. He is the spy. And he loads a messenger bird with a message of the latest thing that's going on, the latest deliberations behind the lines. But Conan shoots the bird and finds the message and realizes that this guy is the spy and chases after him. Paul Tierno runs to the roof. And you would think, well, what good is that going to do him? But he has a flying contraption on the roof. And he thinks he has escaped Conan because of that. But he's wrong. Conan leaps. Look at that. Exactly the same, except for the shifting shadows and the movement on top there. And that is done, I think Ernie Chan does that to emphasize that we're a long way off the ground even now. This is dangerous stuff to do. Conan manages to grab him. And they tussle in air, and Conan drops into the water. He drops from that height. He drops from up there into the water. There, if you can see it, is a moose. Apparently, the Hyborian Age has moose. I won't get pedantic about what would happen to you if you fell into the water from that height. It's a comic book after all. But Conan has done sufficient damage to Paul Tierno's flying device that he heads for this tall spear of rock and looks like he has crashed there. And then the scene shifts, and we get another amazing panorama of just a town in the Hyborian Age. Look at all the detail there. Look at all that's happening there. We get little bits of dialogue from people in the background saying to each other. The purpose of that digression is to show us something that I imagine is going to come to fruit in later issues, because it doesn't happen in this issue, where a woman in this teeming city is stalked by non-human creatures who eventually grab her and kill her. But in the meantime, Conan is back in the kingdom, and his prince is frustrated still because Paul Tierno is a traitor, and we wonder about Paul Tierno, and it turns out his collision with that tall spire of rock did not kill him. It totally disabled his flying machine, but it didn't kill him. It scratched him up some, knocked out a tooth. He's furious, and like everybody else that we encounter in these issues of Savage Sword of Conan, he's furious with Conan. He says, "What earthly good will my survival do me? My flying machine is shattered beyond even the faintest hope of repair, and there's no way I can possibly get down from here. I'll slowly, painfully perish from exposure and starvation, and it's all because of that stinking barbarian." So he is no friend of Conan's. Now we get a subplot where those mass beings, those inhuman mass beings, are after a particular gem, but nothing comes of it. Those subplots are in there so that you will keep reading. A departure from the original idea of Savage Sword of Conan, where it wasn't a typical comic book. The story was complete in itself. You didn't have little teasers for a big blockbuster reveal in a few issues. But I guess after 100 issues and more, you would start to revert to form. But Paul Tierno is doing no better. He is in a savage rainstorm. He is assuming that he's going to die, when suddenly an osprey appears. That is not an osprey. But I guess you don't want to call it an eagle or a monster eagle or anything like that. The eagle, while he's watching, it's struck by lightning and lands on his ledge. Total coincidence. Now, in the meantime, we have an entire subplot where Conan is a spy in the opposing kingdom, and he is pretending that he is a gladiator named Thanos. We have that entire plot line so that we can see Conan do some gladiatorial combat. But then, when we shift back to that spire of rock, Paul Tierno has decided that he can make use of the dead osprey, that he can lash together with thongs made of gut and sinew the fallen osprey's wings, and he can lash to his own hands the fallen osprey's talons, and he can fashion in this way for himself a flying suit. And that is weird. That is extremely weird. Absent sorcery. Well, there is no sorcery here. Absent sorcery, that's just foolish on the part of Michael Fleischer. That's just foolishness. But as mysterious as that is, there's something else that's even more mysterious, which is that in a matter of days, maybe 2 days at the most, I mean, how long could this guy live without food and water? It can't be that long. In a matter of a few days, he has jazzercised himself into a different person. He looks different. He doesn't have a chubby face. He doesn't have a chubby body. He is taller. He's more muscular. He looks like a different person. But it manages to work. He fashions himself a flying suit and flies off. Now, you'll never guess what he plans to do with that suit. He plans to exact vengeance. But while Conan is spying in this enemy city, he sees the fruit of Paul Tierno's treachery. He sees the work. He's not just spying on his prince. He's also been working for this other city. And the thing he's been working on is duplicates of his own original flying device that can be mass-produced so that this city has a flying regiment of soldiers. That's important intelligence for Conan to get back to his own prince. Look at these lovely drawings. Look at that. That is just lovely. Just wonderful. This is Conan. Apparently he's a little dismayed at being presented with a buxom wench who wants to bed him. I admit that's a bit of a stomach-churning idea, but still, you'd think that Conan would be used to it by now. But the prince in the city is wondering what's going on when Paul Tierno, who apparently can fly and navigate and cover ground with pasted-on bird wings, he flies to these men. We get another great visual. Look at that visual right there, of him just perched in the window like that. As he readies his airborne troops, but he wants personal vengeance on Conan. And so they fight. In the middle of the issue, they fight. Conan fights against this guy whose only superpower is that he can fly. So very, very similar to Spider-Man versus the Vulture, where in the earliest appearances of the Vulture, before there's this suggestion that the device that gives him the ability to fly also gives him enhanced strength, in the earliest visions, he can just fly, and that's supposed to be his terror. Spider-Man can't fly. So we get stuff like that, and we get a great Conan moment where Paul Tierno is flying. He says, "I can support your weight all," and then he's about to say all day. And then he looks down at Conan, who has a torch in his hand, and he says, "What? That firebrand? You moron! Let it fall! Don't you realize that if any of these feathers catch fire, you and I will both?" And then he stops himself and says, "Gasp! That look on your face, like a demon's. You don't care if we die." And that is probably true to Conan. He sets the wings on fire, and then he falls. And this time it's not into a conveniently placed lake with a moose by it. Instead, he just falls out of the sky. hits the roof, grabs a flagpole, hits another roof, and then a third roof, hits a fourth roof, and smashes through it. The men say, he's broken every bone in his body. He must have. Yeah, he must have, but he doesn't. He's just fine. 'Tis but a flesh wound. He instead is in a place to point out this oncoming flying regiment. And fortunately there are catapults ready to deal with it. And they do deal with it. They burn the flying men right out of the sky. Again, you start to wonder about the Hyborian age. The reason that the catapults burn these flying men out of the sky is because there are 100 flying men. If there were 1,000, there wouldn't be enough catapults to burn them out of the sky, and the city has the technology to make more flying men. So why aren't there airplanes in the Hyborian age? But this is what I'm talking about. The catapults succeed in knocking down the advantage. The cities are still at war, and they must fight it out the old-fashioned way, and the city that has Conan on its side is going to win. And Michael Fleischer decides that, presented with this terrific comic book artwork, he doesn't really need to intervene, and so he doesn't. He doesn't intervene. There are no words at all. Instead, we just get great visuals like this all the way to the end. It is presumed, the city has fallen. Look at the detail there. The city has fallen. We presume that Conan will be victorious. We don't even get shown that. Instead, the thing cuts back to those mysterious worm creatures and the gigantic being they are attempting to revive. So that's going to be a storyline for another time. But that is this story, The Claws of the Osprey, which is a little bit odd. It's a little bit weird, even for a Conan story. And in the letters page, we have someone writing from Grand Ledge, Michigan, who writes, I really like seeing Conan find a match like Grey Wolf. These are all in response to the issue that we saw earlier. Usually Conan either beheads or guts his opponent. Not that I don't mind, it's just that we never see Conan bleeding or mortally wounded. I held off writing about this as long as I could, but Conan is, after all, only a man. Also, I would like to see some more covers by Earl Norham, or maybe even Boris Vallejo. Not so many by Joe Jusko, and let's have quite a bit more of the Brotherhood of the Falcon. And I can't help but agree with the writer from Michigan that maybe a little fewer Joe Jusko covers would be good. Although the writer from the next letter, from Brisbane, opens his letter in italics with heresy. He writes, I'd just like to say most of your magazines are great, that is, except the ones done by Gil Kane. Excuse me? Oh, goodness gracious. Just goes to show you that everything you've heard about Brisbane, Australia is true. But there you go. That is the Claws of the Osprey. Osprey are not dangerous birds. Even when you threaten their nest, they're usually just going to watch. They're usually not going to do anything. But there we go for another Conan adventure. I very much like the moment where Conan's enemy, who we don't see die, keep in mind, Paul Tiono does not die. He flies away with his wings on fire, but he could easily make more. The moment when Paul Tiono realizes that when Conan sets his mind on something and is enraged, he doesn't care whether he lives or dies. That was good. That gets let's say one lopped head. so we'll put this to bed for now and move on to the next one next time, and I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.